And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Possibly. Okay, so just as kind of a disclaimer, I'm balancing two computers and a bunch of stuff. So if you see me bumble some things, that's kind of why. So we're here for common sense. Calmin sense, not just common sense. And what that is, it's a presentation on how to use the senses to help anybody de-escalate. So kind of to give you my background, I've had over 20 years of experience with kids that have various behavioral issues, mental health issues, developmental trauma. My own son has a history of mental health issues. I've been working with NAMI for 11 or 12 years now. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So kind of today's agenda, the first thing we're going to do is start with talking about the brain science of all of this. What I'm discussing is not just, I mean, it is fun once we get into it, but there really is a science behind it. We're going to look at a little bit at the escalation cycle, and then we're going to go over some different sensory techniques that you can use yourself to regulate, that you can use to help others regulate. If you work with kids or have loved ones or work with adults that are ever dysregulated, these techniques can help. So kind of some of the science behind it. What emotional dysregulation is the inability to regulate the emotions and behavior. And this can have many different causes. Mental health being one of them, but trauma is one, and just life is one. I mean, I have no qualms saying that everybody in this room has had a time in their life when they have been dysregulated. We all have those times. And so that's kind of what it is. It's just that inability in that moment to behave in the way that you want to behave, whereas you're behaving more in the way your body is kind of forcing you to. Some of the things that can play into this are anxiety disorders, depression, anger, mania. All of those are symptoms of dysregulation. Dysregulation is biologically based. It is rooted in the nervous system, but it's also rooted in the circulatory and the respiratory system. And it really does serve a purpose in that if you think back to, caveman days, it was important that your body responded if you heard a growling noise. You wanted your circulatory system to start pumping the blood faster. You wanted your lungs to start breathing faster so that you could hightail it out of there. Whereas if you didn't have those responses, you wouldn't have been able to survive. And so what was meant in the beginning as a survival thing has kind of turned on us in today's time when we don't need those panic moments for survival during most of our lifespan. There are moments, of course, when it is necessary, but many of us probably experience those moments at times when we don't really want to have those moments. So kind of to go over the parts of the brain, and this is, of course, a simplification. You could go through years of schooling just learning the brain. But the prefrontal cortex is at the front part of your brain. It is the area of your brain that you are choosing what you're doing. You're thinking, you're able to have rational thought, you're able to process language, you're able to regulate your emotions, you can problem solve, you can communicate, you can do all the things that most people typically do on a daily basis. Okay, this is where you want to be. This is where you can relax. So if you're ever having moments where you're just totally relaxed and enjoying, this is the part of your brain that you are functioning in. The next part of the brain is the limbic system. And it actually involves more parts than just the brain, but that's where it starts. And the function of the limbic system is to regulate your mood, to socially attune you. So when you are, going out to dinner with friends, you are satisfying your limbic system. You're attuning to those around you. When you see somebody come into a room and they're calm and you kind of calm, then that's social attunement. If you see someone come in very angry and immediately you kind of tense up, that's social attunement. And this is also where that threat response goes. Some things that are helpful if you're stuck kind of in this limbic system is to just have a calm and quiet environment. If you're with somebody else who's in this part of their brain, you want to use very simple language. Long, drawn out conversation is not, they're not able to process that much. And to just really actively listen to them. Oops, wrong computer. Okay, so then the next system is the, well, this is actually part of the limbic system, but it's your amygdala. And on this picture, you can see the teeny tiny little yellow part that looks kind of like the tip of a finger. And it's also right next to the red part, which is the hippocampus. The amygdala is that part in your brain that sensed that lion's growl and knew that you needed to speed up your blood, you need to speed up your breathing so you could get out of there. The hippocampus is where your memory is held. These are side by side, and this is why if somebody has an episode in which they are highly dysregulated, they're not able to think, they may not remember it fully. This is why people that have a lot of trauma also tend to have issues with memory. Okay, when the amygdala is firing, again, you need somebody to be calm, you need limited language, reduce as much stimuli as you can, lights out, quiet space. And you know someone's here because they're yelling, they're crying, they may be lashing out at somebody, okay? The next part of the brain is the brainstem. And in our building, we are a trauma-informed school, and we have worked with what's called the neurosequential model a lot. And we talk frequently about how kids of trauma spend a lot of time in their brainstem. Now, the brainstem is a vital part of your brain. It is the one part of your brain you absolutely can't live without. It is the part that tells your body that you need to breathe. It tells your body that the heart needs to beat. It regulates your hormones, all those functions that you don't know are really going on in your body all the time. The brainstem regulates those. It regulates your sleep and your appetite. It regulates your fear states, which are fight, flight, or freeze. So when someone's in their brainstem, they're probably either fleeing, so they're running off, they're fighting, or they're freezing. And you'll know this, they're running off, they're aggressive, they're destroying things. We see this a lot out of our kids. In adults, many adults, because of their years of life experience, can sometimes, maintain a little more than just their brainstem, but some adults, they will get aggressive, they will destroy things, and this is why. During this time, a person cannot process language, so the only thing you should probably say to them are related to safety. You need to be very still. Their system is in that mode of it's taking in every tiny little thing that's going on in the room. And so even if you move in a way that you think could be helpful, it can be seen as threatening. And the whole point in this is just to maintain everybody's safety. So those are kind of the parts of the brain and how you know where you're functioning. Getting the wrong computer here. This is kind of, this is the emotional response cycle. And this is what we all go through every time we have a high emotion, whether it is a high good emotion, you're really excited about something, or a high negative emotion where you're very angry about something. This is also the kind of emotion, if you think, okay, we all live in Kansas, we're all very familiar with tornadoes, right? So this mimics the same thing we would do in that situation. You know, everything's calm, we're calm, no problems. Then there's something of a trigger. So in a storm system, that trigger could be the clouds are building up. It could be some kind of, we get warnings from the news that this could be, you know, the next 24 hours, we could see storms, that kind of thing. Then there's a point of agitation. And then from the point of agitation, there's a time period called acceleration that goes from that agitation to the peak. For some people, this is a very, very short amount of time. For some people, this can be a very long amount of time, to the point where, I don't know about you, but I've had days where it's built inside me all day, and I get home and just all of a sudden I hit my peak. And it could have nothing to do with what's going on at home, but that's where my peak was. So it can build for a long time, or it can build for a very short time. After the peak, so the tornado has hit, then there's a period of de-escalation. And this is a period we're really looking at today. After de-escalation, there's a point where you're actually below calm. And if you've ever seen somebody who's been extremely angry or violent, and they finally come down from that, a lot of times they'll sleep, or they'll have kind of a time period where they just zone out, or just completely kind of disconnect. And that's a recovery. And you're actually at a lower period as far as your body goes than it was when you were calm, because you're really kind of, in a way, you've dissociated from the issue. And then there's a point of reintegration. Everybody at times in anger say or do things they don't want to do. And that reintegration period, it's rough. If you've, like, I think to some of my kids, they've totally torn up a classroom, right? They're so angry, they've torn this classroom up. They've finally calmed down, they've picked stuff up. But there's a point they have to re-enter that classroom with all the other kids and the teacher. And that's a hard step to take. But it's one of the most critical, because if you don't have a successful reintegration, the likelihood is you're going to go right back through this cycle. And so even though with people that you know or love, they may not be coming back into the classroom, they're still coming back into the social construct that you have. Maybe they've been up in their room and they're coming back to rejoin the family. Maybe they've stomped out of the house and they're coming back home. Maybe they've slammed the phone down from 3 states away, and at some point they're going to have to call back and reintegrate with whoever they had that conflict with. So this is just kind of that emotional cycle. Like I said, today we're going to stay focused in the de-escalation phase of this, because that's the one that most people really, they don't know how to help somebody else, and they don't always know how to help themselves. So some tips for this before we get to the more kind of fun stuff that I have here. When you're helping someone de-escalate, keep in mind they've hit that peak, which means in that peak, they're in their brainstem, they are not processing language. This is not a time to lecture. This is not a time to, you know, go over everything that should have been done or could have been done. You just want to limit your conversation. Let them come down. Watch your nonverbals. As I mentioned a minute ago, especially people that have experienced a lot of trauma, they are overly attuned to what's going on around them in the environment. And so while you might just be lifting your arm up to point to something, they may see that as a threat because at some point in their life, somebody may have raised their hand up to smack them. And so by you just raising your arm up, even though it had completely innocent intent, that's not what their body processed. So you need to watch those nonverbals. Give them space. I kind of jokingly sort of tell teachers that I work with, keep out of slapping distance. If you are within distance where that kid could slap you, you're too close. Give them space. There's no need for you to be all up in their bubble. Most of us don't want somebody all up in our bubble when we're upset anyway. And just having people too close and feeling that kind of slight, almost claustrophobic type feeling can re-escalate a situation. Make sure you're showing them empathy. Saying things like, well, I don't see why you got mad about that. That's ridiculous. That's not helpful at this point. Saying things like, if they're to the point where they can talk, how do you feel? Well, I'm mad about da-da-da. Okay, I hear that you're angry. And then they may say, well, yeah, da-da-da-da. And so the best thing to do is kind of repeat back to them so that they know that you heard them. Again, giving plenty of space, staying unemotional and rational. And this can be one of the most difficult parts. With my son, it used to be very difficult for me to stay unemotional because I am emotionally invested in my kids. But I kind of had to learn to kind of put this wall on or up in myself, and that I couldn't join the chaos. I couldn't join that escalation, because if I joined, then everybody's all dysregulated and nobody can help the situation. And that's very tricky. There are cases where, people are doing things that are dangerous to themselves, dangerous to you, dangerous to other people around. But the best thing you can do is to try to stay calm and rational. And if you can't, if there's anybody else who can step in that can be, that's a better bet. And ignoring challenging questions and snide comments. That's just trying to get something out of you. That's trying to get you emotional. If you ignore those things, they'll eventually fade away. But if you start reacting to that, you're going to get into a back and forth that's not going to end anytime too soon. And always remember that during de-escalation, it's not a problem-solving time. They are not in the part of their brain that can problem solve. Sometimes it takes days for them to get back to that point in their brain where they can problem solve. For some, it might take an hour. For others, and depending on how severe the episode was. Typically, the more severe the episode, the longer it's going to take before they can problem solve. And this is all because of where their brain is operating at the time. And you can't rush the brain. It's going to do what it's going to do. Okay, so getting into some of these sensory techniques. As I mentioned, this isn't a time to problem solve. They aren't operating in the part of the brain that makes decisions. And so even by you talking to them, they're not processing that language. We have to figure a way to get through to the person in a different way, because our primary mode of communication, talking, isn't something that's accessible to them at the time. So we're going to look at the 8 senses. Now, most of us probably grew up knowing we had 5 senses. And now the research is showing there's 8. Some pieces of research are even showing that there's more than that, but I'm going to focus on the main 8. So all of these occur within a spectrum. We can be hyposensitive to something, which means that we don't feel it. or we can be hypersensitive where we overfeel it, okay? All of us experience sensory within this spectrum. Where we experience it can vary by age. It can vary by just life experiences. As you get older, you may become more hypo or hypersensitive to things. Trauma plays a role. Things like autism play a role. And even things like COVID play a role. COVID plays a role with your sense of smell and your sense of taste. Dementia can play a role because, again, some of your senses can be altered due to dementia. So when we're looking at somebody when we're looking at the sense of auditory, so hearing, people who are hyposensitive like a lot of noise. They might like really loud concerts. They listen to their music very loud. They may talk very loudly. They may just have a lot of vocal energy, singing all the time, humming, whistling, just always making sound. And the farther on that scale you are, the more hyposensitive you are, to the point where if you are deaf, you are completely hyposensitive. You have no sense of hearing, okay? Hypersensitive are people who dislike loud noise. This is one that with like people who have autism, some of them are so hypersensitive to hearing that if they're in a store that has fluorescent lights, they can actually hear the buzzing of the lights. Probably about 10 years ago now, when Walmart built their neighborhood store at 119th and Central, they actually had an autism expert come in and help them choose lighting that would not do that as an awareness piece. The Warren, prior to COVID, used to have sensory screenings, movies, where they would leave the lights on, they would turn down the volume of the movie so that kids that had autism or adults that had autism could go and enjoy that without being so hypersensitive to the things in there. Firecrackers are another one. Somebody who startles really easy, absolutely hates 4th of July. They're hypersensitive to that sound. Now, for some people, that comes from PTSD. That's a common theme for war veterans to experience. If they hear the firecrackers, it reminds them of their experience during war. But there's a lot of people that just don't like the sound. They don't really have a reason. My daughter's one of them. She absolutely hates the 4th of July because she can't stand that startling loud sound. So again, you can be anywhere within this spectrum. So some things to kind of help with different areas of this. So if someone is hyposensitive, often they seek more sound. They don't hear it as well, so they're seeking more. So some things for them could be drumming, making sure that they have, this is going pretty old school, but this is something I use in my classroom. It's an old MP3 player, and I've loaded elementary appropriate music on here, and the kids can listen to a playlist that's loud, or they can listen to a playlist that's quiet. And it kind of just depends on what they like. Some other things, this is called a Tibetan singing bowl. You can get things like this on, this one just came from Amazon. And the way this works is this wooden dowel circles around the outside. And it progressively gets louder. I have a few students that respond very well to this. They like making that noise. And this is a sound that's a little less irritating than them banging all over everything in my room. Other things, and I'm trying to show, as we go through this, I'm trying to show things that you might have around the house or that are super cheap, as well as things that you can purchase from places like Amazon or wherever. Another auditory, this is just a little like foam tongue depressor. Basically, I think it's like a foam craft stick. And I have kids that will just sit and tap it on things. And that is enough sound for them to be able to regulate themselves without annoying every other person in my classroom. So things like this can help. If you have somebody who is hypersensitive, they don't like that loud noise. This is a pair of headphones. These were regular headphones. I literally took scissors and cut off the cord. They don't work anymore. And the kids can wear them. These don't take away all the sound. I let kids in my classroom wear them even when I'm teaching because I know they can hear me, but it muffles a lot of the little noises. There's also things that are more like this. These are actual noise canceling headphones. They're the type of headphones that they sell for like little kids to wear at like race car place, somewhere where a kid's going to be around very loud noise. And so these block out a lot of sound. I don't let my kids wear this while I teach, but they wear it when they test so that they don't hear all the things. I also have kids that, or have had kids that during a fire drill, that noise is too much. They put these on, they're okay. There are, as in the picture, there are little foam earplugs. So if you are somebody who doesn't like a lot of noise, but you don't necessarily want to advertise that, you can get those and put them in. A lot of people nowadays will just wear their regular earbuds, and they may not even have anything playing, but it helps block the sound. Other things could be white noise machines, things like fans. There's a lot of people that sleep with a fan, not because of the coolness factor, but because of the noise factor, and it drowns everything out, especially people that live in a home with a lot of people, or live in like an apartment or near a noisy street, or maybe they work third shift and so they're sleeping during the day. So there's a lot of reasons you might need one of these things, and they're not all related to dysregulation. Okay, the next sense is visual. And this is just as correct, that it's what you're seeing. So someone who's hyposensitive, they like all the lights on. I had a little guy in my class last year, and I'm very hypersensitive with light. He was very sensitive, and we had to come to some agreements on what the light level of the classroom is. He liked all 3 lights. And I was like, nope, you get 1. And some days if he was off, I'd give him 2. But so you can be, again, on either spectrum of that. If you are hyposensitive, you tend to be very distracted by movement because everything catches your eye. A lot of times people that are hyposensitive struggle with like movies or TV if anybody else is in the room, because any movement and they're catching it, and so they miss what's going on. Someone who's hyposensitive may also frequently lose their place when they're reading. And that's not one we necessarily think of, but again, it's that distracted by movement. And if you're reading and you don't keep your finger in a place and you get distracted and you come back, you're 4 words off. And so they have to relocate where they are. If you're hypersensitive, you don't like the bright lights. You may get frequent headaches, and you may avoid looking at people's eyes. You might, on days when I'm really hypersensitive to light, I wear my sunglasses in the house. Because even with all the lights off, just the ambient light from outside some days is too much for me. So some different strategies, getting them to watch a movie or TV, getting their mind shifted. Some things like sensory bottles. So this is one that's super easy to make. It's just an old, this one I think was vitamin water that we just, somebody drank and donated to me. I took off the label. I filled it with mostly water, and I put in some clear glue, and some glitter of my choice. This one's blue. And kind of the way this works, the more glue there is, the slower the glitter falls down. And then you want like a drop or two of like dishwashing detergent, like some Dawn or whatever. And that just helps the glitter keep from clumping. But it can be used kind of as a timer. And the glitter, someone can watch it and just kind of, it's really kind of soothing to just watch it settle to the bottom. They have what are called visual timers. This is one that came off of Amazon, and it's just like an acrylic. It's got like oil, colored oil or water or something in there. And this one has blue and green, and it just slowly drips from the top to the bottom. And then you can kind of turn it over. And then you can also put other things. I'm not sure how well this one will show up, but this is just a bottle, again, like a Gatorade bottle that has Orbeez in it. And I'm going to show you what those are in a little bit. And this is just something that you can just kind of watch the Orbeez as you move the bottle around. And again, the whole point with all of these things is to use that sense. That's a way to get into the brain that you can't reach verbally, and to distract the person from whatever it is they're so focused on, the anger, the whatever, and get that sense in there to bring that focus away from that thing that they're upset about. This is my absolute favorite new toy. This I got off of Amazon. And what it is a little light projector. And I was hoping it would be dark enough by now, but I don't think it is. But when I turn this on, I don't think you can see it. You can kind of see in here, there is light in there, and it shows up and it looks like the northern lights on the ceiling. And then it also has over here a green laser that puts stars up on the ceiling. And this is one that I have a student right now who really struggles with regulation and had a really, really rough day. And that was the only thing that kind of brought her back. She just laid on the couch in my room and just stared up at the northern lights, and that was able to bring her back. Another thing to do, there's a picture on here with the light cover. So this, of course, doesn't work everywhere, but if you have fluorescent lights at your office, or I have them at school, wherever, there are these magnetic filters that you can put up there, and it will filter the light so it's not quite so bright. And that's another really good thing for kids that really struggle with being hypersensitive to the light. It helped me get rid of migraines that I had for quite a number of years. I got these in my classroom, and because it filtered out that fluorescent, my migraines finally went away. And headaches and hypersensitivity to light they go hand in hand often. Okay, so this one is the gustatory, which is your sense of taste, or the oral motor. So the taste is obviously what you know of as taste. Oral motor is that need to chew or move the mouth. We see this often in toddlers when they're teething. They have like an obsession with chewing on like everything. And part of that is the teething issue. And part of it is that strengthening the muscles in their mouth and their jaw. And it's a very natural progression. Most people grow out of the need to have a lot of oral motor, but some people don't. You can see this if you look at something somebody is drinking out of, and they have a straw and they chew the top of the straw, they're probably somebody who seeks oral motor. If they chew gum frequently, that's another clue. Biting their nails, craving certain textures of food. things like corn on the cob that require you to kind of do more with your mouth than, say, eating soup. And oftentimes, somebody who's hyposensitive to taste will prefer very spicy foods. So then if you're hypersensitive, people that have food texture issues, there's a lot of people that don't like mashed potatoes, that don't like all kinds of different things because they don't like how it feels in their mouth. People who are hypersensitive often have gagging issues or a very sensitive gag reflex. And they often prefer bland food. So some different things to do. Chewing gum is one of the easiest. Another thing that I've used before is setting out Starburst, like overnight, kind of, protected but not wrapped, and they will become hard. And so it takes a lot to chew. So if I have a kid who's really needing to gnaw on something, that's something that I will use from time to time. Whistling gets them, if you can teach them to whistle, which I would demonstrate, but I can't really do very well. But if you can teach them to do that, that's using some of those same muscles. Blowing bubbles. This is especially great for little kids, but everybody loves bubbles. I mean, come on. But again, the blowing and changing your mouth shape strengthens those muscles. Some other things they have, the picture on here is from a company called Chewy Gum, or Chewy Gym. And we use these at school, and what they are, because while a teething toy is great for a 2-year-old, a chewy toy for a 10-year-old isn't as great. That's kind of embarrassing. And so they have dog tags that people can chew on. They have these little bracelets, and this is actually not one, but they look just like this, that they can chew on. And so they can wear it and just kind of, when they need it, chew and then put it back on. The dog tag ones, they have some that are shaped like a Lego, some that are shaped like a Dark's tooth, all different shapes and sizes of different things for people to chew. Another thing, this is just a silicone straw from like Walmart. You can get these in a pack. And if you have somebody that really chews on straws, this is kind of a good thing. This is less, I'm not sure the word, stigmatizing. If you have a cup and you're just chewing on this, that's a lot less stigmatizing for somebody who is not a child that still needs to chew on something. And this is safe for your teeth. The whole thing with the oral motor is it needs to be safe for the teeth. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole other load of issues. Some things for those who are hypersensitive, things to suck on, like a mint or hard candy, things that are bland, and sometimes just drinking water. And actually, while I'm there, drinking water is one of the best de-escalation techniques, because when you are escalated, your body is filled with adrenaline and cortisol and all these things. And what helps flush that out? Drinking some water. So if you can get somebody who's upset to drink a little bit, that's going to help flush those chemicals out of their body. Okay, olfactory, which is your sense of smell. Somebody who's hyposensitive, they're probably constantly smelling things. You'll see people who will like touch things and then kind of do this, and they're smelling the smell off their fingers, and they're trying to do it in a way that's not advertising to the world what they're doing. You'll see people who wear a lot of perfume or who use a lot of air freshener. Often, especially in like the commercials and things, someone who's hyposensitive will be called nose blind, which we can all become nose blind to smells once we're around them. One of the big issues with a hyposensitivity, a severe hyposensitivity is they might not smell smoke, which is obviously something that we're meant to be able to do for safety. So if someone is hyposensitive, it's even more important that they have smoke alarms that work, because they may not be able to sense that. Somebody who is hypersensitive may avoid scents. They may buy all of their hair care products are unscented, and they like unscented lotion and different things. They may also get headaches due to scents. They may gag on food that is overly seasoned, not even necessarily spicy, but just overly seasoned. And they might like to keep their distance from people because they smell normal body odors. So some things to do. This is one of my favorite tricks, and I actually have a story of a student and why I came up with this to start with. So all this is an old film container, okay, just like we all used to do film. You can also use like an old prescription bottle, just something small like that. And I take cotton balls, and these I colored with just, you know, like a Crayola marker, just so the kid knew what it was more than anything. It doesn't really serve much function, but you put a couple drops of essential oil on it, put it in here, and you can, when you're stressed out, you can smell it. The reason I came up with this, I had a student who she had a set of markers of her own that were those scented markers. And she kept coloring everything with all orange. And so one day I was like, oh, so is orange your favorite color? She's like, no, green is. I was like, okay, well, why are you coloring everything orange if that's not your favorite color? And she said, because I like the smell, it makes me calm. And that was like this, you know, ding, ding, ding light in my head going, oh my gosh. And so I made her one of these, and it was so effective that if she was starting to escalate, I could open it and just set it down in front of her on the table. I didn't have to get it near her. It could be a couple feet away. And that smell would calm her down. And it was such a significant thing for her that I actually wrote it in her IEP that she was allowed to take one to every class, so that when she went to middle school, they wouldn't take that away. She eventually moved to, as you can see in the picture, there's pendants, and the way those work, that colored piece inside, so it like unscrews or unclips or whatever, and that little piece of foam, you can drop essential oils on it, close it, and wear it as a necklace. And so her mom got her one of those, and she moved to that, but to this day she still wears that because that calms her. And what calms one person doesn't calm another. Lavender is one that is, it's an aromatherapy scent that most people say is extremely calming. It gives me a headache and stresses me out. So just because it says lavender is calming doesn't mean it works for everybody. So as with any of these things, you kind of got to experiment a little bit and see what really works. So these are some different aromatherapies, and I'm not touting brands or anything, but some aromatherapies are a single aroma, such as orange or vanilla or lavender. And then some, like this one, have a combination of different oils within it. There's different ways you can use these. There are diffusers. You can put this in and it kind of diffuses it out into the air. There are little bottles that are like this that have a rolling top. I've seen these a lot with like perfume, and you fill it with a carrier oil such as like coconut oil, or I don't know, there's several different carrier oils, and then you add a couple drops of essential oil. Most essential oils you don't want to apply directly to the skin. Some are okay, most you don't want to do that with, but you can do it within a carrier oil with a device like that. You can also spray them. You can add them to shampoos. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with it. Some things, if someone's overly sensitive, and I tend to be pretty hypersensitive to smell, The masks that we've had to wear, while I absolutely hate them, they do help with that smell issue. And so if there are situations in which I know I'm going to be around several things that have a strong odor that I don't like, wearing a mask isn't a bad idea. Chewing gum is another thing, especially something that's like super minty, because you can smell that gum since it's right under your nose and you don't smell all the other things. Another thing, there's several air filters out there that have like charcoal filters and other things that help filter smell out of the air. Okay, tactile. And this is probably one of my favorites. There's so many things. Okay, if you're hyposensitive, often you like very tight clothing. You like to touch everything. My daughter is very hyposensitive, and she, going to Target or Bed Bath & Beyond or something, I mean, she's touching every towel, every blanket, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. A lot of people hyposensitive like to garden more than others because they don't mind the dirt touching them. Some of the people who are hypersensitive won't touch a garden with a 10-foot pole because they can't stand the dirt. Another thing with hyposensitive is they typically have a pretty high pain tolerance because their touch has been affected. Now, things like burns and scars can affect your tactile. If you burn your fingertips, you're not going to be able to feel things as well. If you have neuropathies, things like that, that's going to affect this. So these are some of those other things that I talked about can affect your where you fall on the spectrum over the course of your life. People who are hypersensitive to tactile, they like loose clothing. They don't like their hands to be dirty or sticky. They don't like massage. And they may have a very weak handshake because they don't like touching others, which now that we're COVID, people who are hypersensitive to tactile aren't so opposed to some of our social distance things. So some things to help. With hyposensitive, there are weighted blankets. Typically, they recommend that you do 10% or less of the body weight. So if you have a kiddo that is 100 pounds, you want something that's 10 pounds or less. Knitting is a very tactile thing, both touching the yarn as well as just the process of knitting. Lotions can be deep pressure or massage. These are some different things that are pictured. The poppets, if you haven't seen them, they're kind of like a silicone bubble wrap, and you can pop all the dots and then turn it over and pop all the dots again. The middle thing, those are actually dish sponges that you can get on Amazon, at Walmart, wherever. And they're silicone, and they're really, I can't even describe the feeling of them, but I tend to be a pretty tactile person and I like squishing those. Rice. So I have some colored rice here. And this is just a sample. I have a bin in my classroom that hasn't been used because of COVID, but to color rice, I just took regular rice, not the minute rice, but like the old-fashioned stuff. You add a little bit of water, a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of food coloring, mix it all up, set it on a cookie tray, let it dry. I did that with like 8-10 colors and then mixed it all together and it made rainbow rice. You can do this with beans. People have done it with noodles. You don't have to color it. The first place I actually ever saw this was in the hospice unit at St. Francis. They had a little dish of rice that people could use, and it's strangely calming. And I'll have kids just lay their arm in it and I'll sprinkle the rice on top, and it's something many of them like. Some other things are, this is, what is this? Kinetic sand. And this is something you can buy a brand name or There's lots of generics now, but the cool thing about it is you can kind of make a ball of it and it holds together temporarily, but the kids love doing that. That's a tactile thing. This is basically like a Ziploc bag. This is a thicker one. It has hair gel inside. And then there's just little tiny rubber bands that we use for like crafts. And then the top I sealed with duct tape. And the kids can squish on this. They can kind of move the bands around. You can put other things in there. You can color it. This one's blue. It also has some sequins in it. Anything that's not gonna like puncture the bag. They don't last forever, obviously, because Ziploc bags will eventually, you know, need to be replaced, but they work pretty well. Then I also have, these are Orbeez or water beads, and they come in a bag like this. They're tiny, kind of like barely bigger than a rice. And this bag was full, and it was like $5 off Amazon. And you soak them in water, and then this is so hard to show. Oh, that's cool. They make these little beads, and the kids absolutely love putting their hands in them and touching them. You can add essential oils to them. They are washable, because you can, like, I wash mine out at school where I just put a little bit of soap in it and just swish it around, drain it all off. So unlike the rice, this is something that I can use during COVID. But again, it's a fun tactile thing. This is simply, this is a freebie. I took a piece of just like random cardboard, some white cardboard, and then I cut, I don't know if you can see, but I cut notches in the end. And then I just took some nice fuzzy yarn and just wound it around the card, going through the little notches. And I mean, what do you do with it? You just kind of rub it. If you've ever walked through the yarn stores, they have some really soft yarns. So you can do something like this. This is something that, again, this was yarn like made out of like a t-shirt type material. And so I just put several strings. I knotted it at the top and put a little hook up there, and they can hang it on a hook on the wall. And I'll have girls that braid it. I'll have kids that just kind of come up and touch it. So again, things that don't necessarily cost a whole lot, that can still accomplish meeting their sensory needs. Stress balls are another tactile thing. Showers can be. Some kids that are hypersensitive, even though shower is listed under there, they might not like all the touching of the water. For some kids that bothers them. Okay, let's see. So the next one is vestibular. And it is your sense of balance, basically. Somebody who's hyposensitive may be constantly moving. They may seem uncoordinated. Think like bull in a china cabinet kind of thing. They like to run. They're always up in your bubble. They don't have much sense of personal space. If they're hypersensitive, they may become motion sick. They may dislike elevators or escalators, not because of the closed in component, but because of the off balance feeling on those. Some things you can do. Yoga is wonderful. Rocking chairs. So one of the things I tell parents and teachers is, or I ask them, is what worked when they were a baby. And if they tell me, well, they loved in their swing or they love their bouncy chair, those are two pretty common ones, then a rocking chair might be one of the most soothing things for them. A porch swing. And if you think back to people you've known in your life, is it easy to be angry and aggressive when you're rocking or when you're swinging? Like, I can't think of a single instance in which I knew somebody that got super angry when they were doing one of those things, because they're naturally calming activities. They're things that from birth, we were trained that that was a calming thing. Going for a drive can help. For some, doing things like skating, riding a bike, doing a skateboard, if they're hyposensitive, so they're not getting a lot of feedback from their own body, they may need those big activities to feel balance. Yoga is great, again, if they're hypersensitive, just laying down, doing balance ball exercises may help. Some things we use in the classroom, this is called a balance board. This is the bottom, and it sits on the floor like this, and kids put their feet here and here, and they try to maintain a balance. And you can have them catch a ball and talk and do reading and do all kinds of things on this while they're trying to maintain their balance. And that is meeting their vestibular need. Another thing I have in the classroom, this is like a little seat cushion. One side has, this is like spiky, and then this side just has little like dots that give a little texture, but not much. And so when you sit on this, because it is inflatable, it constantly is moving. And so they can sit and constantly be moving, and that can help them reset. So again, all these things are helping reset them and get them regulated. All right, we are close to done here. Proprioceptive. The proprioceptive sense is the sense of basically like knowing your body's movement, knowing how hard you can grip something. When you see a pitcher full of water or a jug full of milk, you know that you have to pick that up differently than one that's empty. Some people don't have that same sense of feeling, okay? A lot of times, if they don't have much proprioception, they're walking loudly, they'll like bang their feet as they're walking. They might have an overly tight grip, especially like they go to do a handshake and you're like, good grief, I hardly have any feeling left in my hand. They might run into objects or walls or people. This is another kind of, can be a bull in a china shop kind of moment, because they're not sure of what their muscles are doing. If they're hypersensitive, they may appear lazy. They may prefer to just be very still. They may be very uncoordinated. They may have a very loose grip on things. So some good things here, if they're hyposensitive, having them do heavy work. So in schools, we often stick a couple dictionaries in a backpack and have them walk around. Moving heavy things from one place to another. Suddenly at school, often someone will need their dictionaries moved from one side of the room to the other side of the room. And it's that heavy work using their muscles that helps regulate them. Things like dancing, kneading bread is one. Lifting weights. With the kneading, Play-Doh can be another one. This is called Needoh, Needoh, and it feels like Play-Doh inside, and it really gives your hand a workout. This is a ball that got dirty earlier, but I can't even tell you what it's really made out of. I'm not sure, but you can squish it, but it's really hard to do. Like, it would build up your hand muscles. A regular stress ball can do this too. This is a worry stone. And so having kids hold that and push really hard on their thumb as they rub the stone is getting their body doing some heavy work. Okay, last one, the interoceptive. So this sense is, so the last couple of senses have been things that are more internal. This one is very internal. If you're hyposensitive, you might eat too much and you eat to the point where you almost feel like you're going to be sick. You might become very easily dehydrated because you don't realize you need to drink Often you have a high pain tolerance. People who are hyposensitive here may have an injury or an illness that they're completely unaware of. I have a cousin who broke his arm, didn't know it. Okay. If you're hypersensitive, you might have things like chronic stomach problems. You might not eat enough because as soon as you start to feel a little full, you're like, oh, I can't go anymore. You might overreact to pain and have a very low tolerance for pain. You might feel every little thing wrong in your body. You might hear your heart beating more than a normal person or more than somebody on a different part of this scale would feel. Okay, it's that awareness of the inside of your body. Sometimes there are people that can go to the doctor and be like, I know something is wrong with this because I feel this, and the doctor may look at them like they've lost their mind, but they honestly are feeling that because they're so in tune to what's going on inside. Okay, so some things here. Focusing on deep breathing, doing exercises where you tighten and then relax different muscle groups. So you might start with your toes, tighten and relax, then your calf muscles, and then your thigh muscles, and go clear through the body. Weightlifting or resistance training. For hypersensitive, again, focusing on deep breathing, because when you're focusing on deep breathing, you're focused on the inside of your body. And again, tightening and relaxing muscle groups and teaching them to find a focal point. I had chronic stomach problems when I was a kid, and our bathroom hadn't been finished. There was some drywall up on the wall, and I remember picking out this focal point, and to me, it looked like this little girl with a bob that had a popsicle and a little dress upside down. And to this day, when I'm stressed out, even looking at a blank wall, I can still see that. And I haven't seen it for 30 years probably now. But it was such a focal point for me that I can still go there. The picture below shows a box that says just breathe. That blue is just painter's tape up on the wall. And we can teach people to, you inhale going across, exhale going down, or vice versa, whichever way you want to do it. You can do it with any kind of shape, but it's just to give a focus on how to do that breathing. Blowing things like pinwheels, bubbles, like I did earlier, having a timer of deep breathing, blowing up a balloon, and the firmer the balloon, the better, because they're having to take a deep breath and release it. Pictured at the bottom there is a marble maze. And what those are, it's just two pieces of fabric sewn in kind of a maze type pattern, and you move the marble from one spot to another spot. And we teach them to breathe to inhale and then exhale as they're moving the marble. But again, it's finding that focus. So these are kind of what I have in my room at school. I also have a little portable one. This is just a little square, like Rubbermaid box. On the top, I put scratchy and soft Velcro as a tactile. And then inside, I just have some of the little things, like what I've shown tonight, of different things. And I can take this with me if someone calls and they're like, I need help with this kid, they're really dysregulated. I can take this box. We can go wherever and then calm them down there, get them to the point where they can travel to my classroom, and then they can use some of the other things. And these are just pictures of more of what we did tonight. And then the bottom is, at my previous school, we gave every classroom teacher a kit that had all of those things in it, because we felt like this was such a critical thing. And it was a very successful intervention. Our kids learned to calm themselves down, and we had a lot less behavioral things. If you were making a kit for an adult, I mean, some women I know carry some of these types of things in their purse. Lotion, a Rubik's Cube, your knitting, whatever it is that you find calming, keep with you. You can carry a backpack. You can, have something that's small and in your pocket, whatever works for you. And this has become such a popular, common, helpful thing that this is a kit put together by a university. And off the top of my head, I can't remember which university, but they gave these out around finals time. And this has probably been about 7 years ago that this was a thing. They gave out eye mask, earplugs, stress ball, and then those little cards gave ways to help regulate yourself. And so even at the university level, they've recognized that, kids get stressed during midterms and finals and all of that. So I've done a ton of talking. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for anybody that has any kind of questions or things they need clarified, or just things they want to share.
Go ahead,
I have
James.
one. Thank you, David. Ms. Cox,
Yes.
my name is James with CPP.
Welcome.
Weightlifting could be a good pressure?
Yes.
And what about losing weight?
I mean, losing weight is always something that's a healthy thing. I don't know that that's going to directly affect your senses, but lifting weights is absolutely a great thing to do. It's something that, several of the different senses recommended lifting weights. And so that's definitely one of those things that that could help. And then I saw someone ask a question. The Northern Lights stars. Okay, so this one is called the Arevo Atmospheric Lightning. I just did a search on Amazon for what did I do it? I think I did like a child's wave projector. They have different ones. They have some that look more like waves, like ocean waves. They have some that look more like stars. There's a lot of different ones out there. This one is really nice because I also can hook it up to via Bluetooth to my phone. And so, and it has a remote control. So from across the classroom, I can turn it on. I can turn on soothing music, and the combination of the two is really beneficial. But there are tons of different ones out there. This particular one was like, I think like $32. There are some that are anywhere from like $18 on up to however much you want to pay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like the way how you talk about the brains and the stem, and how you talk about the brain stem, how it processes everything, and it's really good that you're knowledgeable and you've done a lot, and I like that. It's interesting to know how things work, and I think it's something to seek through and keep on looking into and finding out and discovering what the brain works, and knowing what the brain works and how we work and anybody else works, and I think things can get along really good.
Absolutely. The brain is really interesting, and I think you could probably study your whole lifetime on it and still learn all kinds of new things.
Hey, I'm wondering if I can ask a question, but not so much for you, Nicole, but I just was wondering in the group of people that were listening, if as adults, that if there's any of these things that you've talked about that they've found helpful for them, if anyone had anything to share. I'm just curious if anybody has used some of that. Or...
Both of my kids suffer from anxiety really bad, and the weighted blankets work really, really well for them. And for Christmas this last year, I just took some flannel and put, like a pillowcase type for the weighted blankets so that they could throw them on their couch and use them rather than just the full bed one.
Great.
Going for a drive is always good. My son, we a lot of times would go for a drive just to, take a chill, and that works really good. I could see where the swing would be a benefit. We used to have a swing in our backyard, a double swing, and then we didn't replace it, but my mom has one, and when we've been over there, he's used that too. The sound, the music, different sounds is good. Music is good.
And one thing with music, if you're wanting to calm somebody, you want to look for music that has roughly 60 to 80 beats a minute. It's kind of the sweet spot in that it will actually cause somebody's heart to start beating in tune with the music. There's a lot of studies out there that show that we can reciprocate our calm to others, just like we can reciprocate our anger to others. But that music, even though someone might be resistant, their body will likely respond. Now, having said that, if someone's super agitated and you turn on some music and they get way worse, then obviously that may not be the best thing for them. But typically speaking, if you can find something 60 to 80 beats a minute, it will slow their heart rates down.
Have you, Nicole, because my son's counselor had suggested to him to use ice. I don't know, have you ever had that? And, had told him to try it out, something with the neurological system that would help be calming. I don't know which part of the fence that is, the tactile or what would that be?
I'm not yeah. What I've heard most often is if you take like a bag of like frozen peas and put it here on your chest, that kind of shocks the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that has a lot to do with regulation and dysregulation, and that can kind of shock that nerve back to what it needs to be. I do in my classroom, I have a little mini refrigerator that I keep. They're just little square things about this big, little ice packs, and they're just reusable ones. And I have kids all the time that ask for them. Sometimes any change can help bring somebody to a state of regulation, because their body is so set in whatever this is, that bringing any kind of change, and that would be through the senses, because they're feeling it, they're feeling that change of temperature, that can definitely kind of bring them back in a way that you can't do verbally. So yeah, I've heard the ice thing too. Now with my own son, when I used to try the ice, and granted it's been a long time and he was pretty young, every time I give him ice, he just threw it at me. So we kind of stopped. But, ice water certainly would be another thing. Again, hydration is a really good thing because it naturally helps dilute a lot of the chemicals going through the body.
Going for a walk, and what you had mentioned, Nicole, about the different stages of where your levels are, because like listening to relaxing piano music might be a good thing as far as depending on where your stages are. I had heard a story with a friend about sometimes just using the other side of the brain and refocusing if like cooking, maybe making your favorite cookies
Mhm.
and thinking about, okay, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. Let's do that. We'll go to the store, get the ingredients for your favorite cookies
Right.
and get involved into making cookies, and life is on a normal kill again, on a normal balance.
Yeah, it's all about kind of that distraction element.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am. Maybe I'm not going to. I was gonna try and document it, and Zoom doesn't want to be nice about it. So.
Any other ones that you guys have on the panel of everybody that you guys have used or have found helpful with senses, or, coping skills, but using one of your senses, any of your senses?
I thought the rocking chair comments were really fascinating. I don't know about the rest of you, but that was one of the pieces of furniture that we got before our first son was born. And that chair is still around. And he's over 50 years old. And there have been several others in the family, but you start when you're very, very tiny and it has an impact. And I enjoy sitting in it also.
I was going to say that when I used to work long-term care, we had sensory rooms for our residents with dementia and Alzheimer's.
We
Oh,
also had a whole sensory table in pre-K for kids that came in that were anxious or a little frightened. And a lot of the items that you shared, Nicole, we have those. No, we don't have them all out at one time. We kind of do trays of different things. And it's amazing when you see a child that's extremely anxious and just something, the silly putty or Play-Doh or any of those things that you shared tonight, how soothing it is.
Well, and you'll find a lot of these things at, I know Crisis has some of this. The Child Advocacy Center, I saw when we went with my son at one time that they had several of these things. If you look at therapist's office, often, you can get somebody to talk a lot when their mind is kept busy or their hands are kept busy with something. People are more likely to open up about things just by keeping their hands busy.
The sand, that forming sand, we bought that a couple of years ago for our son for Christmas, and he loved it, but everybody in the family loved it. We had it all weekend. Everybody was playing with it, and had a really nice big tray for it that you could form stuff in, which was good.
I was thinking about the thing on the sound machine, just to share a story. My daughter, who is not the one with the mental illness, but she's 32, and she had difficulty sleeping at night when she was a young child. Well, then I'm telling on myself here. Then she discovered as an adult that she did so much better with the sound machine. So she sleeps with the sound machine every night, and she has her kids using them too. And she's like, Mom, I know if I had used that, that's probably would have solved my problems when I was a kid. Like, I guess I never thought about it because I didn't need a sound machine myself. So yeah, things are different, for different people. So, but it is good to include things like that because you don't always think of it if it's not your thing that you use. So.
Right. Well, and even my car that I just bought this year has a setting that has like sound of waves, raindrops, like crickets. And I mean, that was a surprise to me because I was like, okay, I'm not sure that's the best choice when I'm driving, but for other people, maybe it is. Okay, any other questions or things you'd like to share?
Yeah, ditto what Kathy said. That was a great presentation, Nicole. So I've seen you do it. Where was it, at Anami, Kansas thing, or well, you've done it for our group before. Is that
I did
right?
it. I did it for Nami Wichita in the middle of a tornado evening, and then I also did it for Nami, Kansas at one of the state conferences, and then I've done it for a couple other Namis through the state.
Okay, well, I've seen it, but I really liked it on I mean, I'm on my iPad and I really liked the presentation, seeing it on the screen like that. I thought it was enjoyable like that as well.
Good to know, because it felt really weird, because usually I have all these things and we pass them around and everybody gets to touch and feel it, and we don't have smell-o-vision or anything like that, so.
Yeah, so do you present it to other groups that? Do you do it at the school or other places, or?
I have presented it at the school before. I just kind of do it for whoever asks. So if you know somebody who might be interested, just have them get a hold of me and we can arrange something.
Joe, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, years back, my dad used to make these small Zen gardens. You heard of that? He'd take like a tray and put colored sand. He went to Hobby Lobby and buy little rakes and little things for knickknacks. He put that in one of the doctor's offices one time, and the patients just come in and they just play in the Zen garden, relaxing. And he had one in his house. It's kind of different. So
That's awesome.
cool.
Well, I really enjoyed your presentation, and I was interested to see all your creative ideas, the things you discovered to get the responses you were looking for.
Well, as a teacher, you have to be good with finding cheap and free stuff. So we found lots of ways around different things to still get there. I mean, you can buy all kinds of stuff on Amazon all day long, but who has that kind of money?
So,
Well, I thought it was great.
you're available for any kind of information and stuff?
I've done this presentation and some pretty similar to it, so I am available to present to groups. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Nicole, I have a cousin who's a teacher, and she did an Amazon want list, and she put that on Facebook for things for her classroom, and she got an abundance of supplies like the poppets and all those other things for her classroom. Put that on. I'll donate.
Okay, well, I put it on my personal page and haven't gotten a whole lot of response, but yeah. And I will tell you, most teachers have those kinds of wish lists. But yeah, last year I changed schools, and I had several people donate to me last year, so I could kind of build up what I had at my previous school at this one. So I'm not quite up to par with where I was, but we're on the way.
One very unique one we did at school, pre-K, we did the film canisters with the cotton in it we had like pepper, where you smelled pepper, from perfume to all kinds of smells. I mean, just every, it was really creative, but they had a lot of fun. Of course, they all wanted to open the lid,
Yeah.
So glued the lid on, and you had the holes in it, for them. But it's amazing, even us. I know when my son was in the hospital, my sister had talked to him one time about just having that touch. And she said, "Can you take something up there for me?" I said, "Sure." She said, "I want you to take a silk ribbon." And at first I thought, he's not gonna. Oh my gosh. He used it every night. He was there to just a little, they let me take a silk, and he would just rub it till he fell asleep.
Mhm.
I mean, a little silk ribbon.
Well, and a lot of times, like I said, you can kind of trace it back to when kids were
Yeah.
babies. Did they have a blanket that had a satin
Mhm.
edge that they would sit there in the middle of the night and rub? I mean, so many of the self-soothing things that we come up with long before we're ever able to talk. And if parents can go back and really kind of think about what things did they choose themselves to soothe, you can come up with something that meets that same kind of need that's, more appropriate. Because obviously, if you're a 30-year-old, you don't want to get your pacifier out or anything. But there are other things that if it was that sucking motion that you liked, there are other things you can do that still produce that same physical sensation. And so it's really trying to hone that in, where you can come up with those creative things that meet those needs without looking like they're still a baby.
In
And sometimes,
reference to the popping things,
yes.
I've got mine. So
Yeah, and I've got my music that I go to bed to, the deep sleep. I turn it on every night, very low as well. That's fun, David.
yeah,
Well, and a few years ago, this was the big thing, these fidget spinners. And
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, those drove teachers crazy, but they
work.
They could work, yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I was thinking, Nicole? I don't know. I mean, they might have limitations, but I wonder, I mean, do they do this like, I'm thinking at the psych hospital, do they use this very much there? Seems like it could really benefit some, I mean, they have people there that are in a lot of distress and that some of that could be helpful to them.
I
From what
definitely think that the senses are underutilized because so often it's people who are able to operate in their, frontal cortex. We're all able to think, and we forget that people who are in that crisis mode aren't in that same part of their brain. And we have to figure out a way to bypass this part to get everything back regulated.
And they
And
don't allow, they don't allow a lot of stuff in, like even the ribbon. When I took the ribbon, it was short and it was wider because, and they okayed that because they won't allow a lot of that stuff in to the hospital, Valerie, just for safety reasons. I think depending on the level you are, as far as the floor, maybe what they'll actually allow you to bring up. But yeah, having that stuff on hand would be a great idea, if just depending on how supervision, is. I think that's a great idea, Valerie.
Well, and for some, if we can get people to figure out how to regulate and they find out that this ball works for them,
Mhm.
if you find something that works, it can prevent future hospitalizations. If they can find ways to regulate themselves routinely, is it going to solve everything? No. But it's definitely a step in the right direction, especially with kids. Most kids that land in the hospital land there, younger kids land there because they can't regulate. And if we could meet these sensory needs, we might see a decrease in that.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you guys for
Thank you.
coming and
Thank you, Nicole.
learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.